Thought I'd seen it all before. A world of trouble knocking at my door. But this ain't like nothing that I recall.
Welcome to In Crisis, Travel Retail Voices, our new podcast series in which we speak to travel retail executives all around the world to see how they and their businesses are coping with the COVID-19 crisis. I'm Martin Moodie. Today's episode features Sarah Branquinho, President of the Duty-Free World Council, whose role, both during and after this crisis, has become more important than ever in trying to ensure that the sector receives appropriate government and airport recognition of the critical role that travel retail plays in funding airport infrastructure and, of course, in keeping the cost of travel down. Sarah is also External Affairs Advisor for travel retail powerhouse Dufry, a role that is keeping her particularly busy at present as our industry's only truly global force battles with a truly global pandemic. Sarah is, of course, married to another great servant of our industry, long-time TFWA President Eric Yule Mortensen, with whom she lives just outside London. I caught up with her on Good Friday to see how she and Eric were doing.
Yes, we're both at home here in Englefield Green, so we do have the pleasure of a lot of green space around us. We have a relatively small garden, but we've got Windsor Great Park next to us, so that's a pleasure. We can get out and do that. In terms of the other people in the house, we've suddenly returned to a three-generation family. My mother, who's 91, has lived with us for several years, so we're doing all we can to look after her. But our son and his fiancée got stranded at Heathrow on their way back from Canada to the UAE, and so they've been here for 3 weeks. And I guess that's one of the things that I'm really pleased about. It's a blessing. You don't often get a grown-up child returning home. Not that it's a child any longer, but you know what I mean.
Exactly. And tell us about the situation in the UK. Like me, Sarah, of course, you're in London or close to London. The country and the authorities were relatively slow off the mark here in terms of the need to avoid contact with others. But as you know, things have really changed drastically over the past 2 weeks, and it looks as though the lockdown is going to be extended for some time. What's the mood like, do you think, in London, in the UK? How are you, Eric, and your friends feeling about the situation?
Well, I think with the benefit of hindsight, really, we didn't even grasp the seriousness of this. Obviously, we looked with horror with what was happening in China and felt very much for our colleagues and friends there. But I don't think we realised how bad this was. And then our daughter in Madrid in early March started telling us, you really need to take this seriously. But even then, it didn't really hit us. And so I think that when it did, it was a huge shock. And it was really over that weekend of the 14th, 15th, 16th of March. Out here in the village, most people are being really good about social distancing, everybody politely moving off pavements or around each other. I think the younger generation seem to be the ones taking it less seriously. We have a university in the village here, and they're maybe not so careful about distancing themselves from other people. I don't go into central London, haven't seen it there. All we see is what's on television, but that is not good, what we see in terms of... Apparently central London is okay, and central of the big cities, but apparently in a lot of the suburbs, people aren't taking social distancing quite as seriously.
Okay, now let's talk about your work. And in your case, Sarah, of course, you wear multiple hats. You've got a very important job with Dufry, but you also played a leadership role with the Duty-Free World Council. So I guess you're used to connecting with the world during your many travels from remote locations, and now here you are connecting with a temporarily remote world from a single location. Quite a change. But how's that affecting your day-to-day? How are you doing those jobs from where you are in lockdown?
Well, to be honest, I seem busier than ever. I think that's partly because I'm having to grapple with technology that I've always shunned learning. So I now seem to be quite competent on Zoom, and I've even had one Skype meeting. So I guess that's been a bit of a hassle, but luckily having our son here, that's helped a bit because he's familiar with them. I do miss the travel and the human contact with people, and not just on a company level, but I mean, I haven't seen our daughter for 2 months, 3 months. That's probably the longest time I haven't seen her in a whole lifetime. And I think that's difficult. And there are moments in your day where you think of people that you haven't seen for ages. I was thinking of the dinner that we would normally have had with David and Harry in Orlando.
Yes.
And that didn't happen. And then you think, well, it won't ever be in Orlando again anyway, because that event's moving, but it's part of your history of a long life in travel retail, and I hope it is going to be next year in the new venue. But life seems very precarious somehow at the moment.
Yes, it certainly does. Now tell me about how the team at Dufry around the world are doing. I won't press you on the business because we all know that's very, very hard. But some of your team, of course, have remained on the front line through this. Some airports, many airports are still operating and some stores are still operating. And I think that's a kind of unrecognised gallantry that people are still in shops all over the world, and some of them in travel retail shops. How are they doing, Sarah? Are you getting much feedback from...
Well, only anecdotally, because I'm not really connected to the operational side of the business. But I do know that in the last days of the stores being open here in the UK, that people were gallantly going around and smiling at passengers and still doing their job. And I guess that's what they did right until the point where their stores might have closed. I thought the staff were just amazing. They were inspiring, communicating about product just as if they were doing all they could to make sure that travellers had a normal journey. In terms of the top team at Dufry, I'm in touch with some of them by phone, but largely on a friendship basis, and I just know that they're all working their socks off to make sure that our staff are looked after and that we're placing ourselves in the best possible position to come out of this.
Yes, indeed. I've spoken to a number of them around the world like you, and they're impressive people, they're good people, and they're just doing their best like everybody else. And that best is very good indeed in a most extraordinarily tough situation.
And I just want to mention Julian Diaz, who continues to lead Dufry, as he always does, with optimism and with huge resilience, and also with a really caring attitude to everybody at the company.
Yeah, that's nice to hear, because of course people see him in the investment community, they see him in the industry as heading this juggernaut, but I know and you know that this is a very human individual at the end of the day, and a very caring one. Sarah, let's move from that to more personal. I was speaking to Stuart Dryberg from Nestle the other day and one or two others on the series about how we react as individuals to this lockdown and whether we develop a kind of cabin fever. Is it driving you crazy, or are you finding, like many of us, that this situation is actually making you rethink some aspects of life and that there are some positives to emerge?
Well, I'm having trouble trying to do everything in the day that I planned to. On the Duty Free World Council side, there's still an awful lot going on. We still have this tremendous issue with tobacco, and while the World Health Organization might seem to be focusing on coronavirus, the WHO illicit trade side of the WHO is still aiming to have their meeting in November. So there's a lot going on around the tobacco issue. Yeah. And as you'll know from the discussion you had also with Jose Luis the other day at Asutil, we've been keeping very much in contact with the regions and supporting each other in all the letters that are going into governments and different regulatory bodies across the world looking for support for our business. I know that ACI are having the same issue, that aviation equals airlines for many governments. And it's been a tough job that's being done to make governments understand that you can't have planes landing if you don't have airports, and airports have fixed costs. And if airports are to recover, of course, the duty-free industry is a vital part of that, because it's one of the quickest revenue generators once you have passengers moving again. So there's still a lot going on there. And then in our village, we have a mutual help group, which is supporting vulnerable people. I've learned some shocking things. I had no idea that so many people depended, and perhaps I'm naive, on collecting their pension from the post office every week. And so you've got people who are running out of cash, running out of food, and the problems we're having trying to support that have been quite immense. The mutual aid goes from everything from buying people's food to walking their dogs, collecting prescriptions. Well, I can't go out and do that because of my mum, but I'm doing a lot of back office work. So that's filling a lot of my day.
Yes.
And yeah, there we go.
It's extraordinary in its magnitude, isn't it? Sarah, you, like me, have lived and worked through various crises, regional and to some extent global ones, Gulf Wars, SARS, MERS, volcano clouds, financial crises, you name them, but there's been nothing at all that has pretty much stopped our parent industry in many parts of the world, travel, of course. So just wearing your Duty Free World Council hat again for a moment, you talked about the tobacco issue, you talked about the need to impress on government that airports are fundamentally important in all this, and that commercial revenues are in turn fundamental to how those airports perform. So really, that's your key focus at the moment, and I guess just trying to get that message across time and time again.
Indeed. We also talk obviously about the maritime sector, but I think that apart from the part of the maritime sector which is about transporting people from A to Z, the airports are likely to come back quicker than the maritime sector in some ways, because we've seen these tremendous stories of people being marooned on cruise ships, and I think it's a mental leap for people to think about maybe cruising as a holiday for a while. But funnily enough, if you talk in your friendship groups, the attitude to what happens when we can all travel again is vastly different. Some of my friends are focused on just staying at home for the moment until this horrible thing just goes away. But there are others who say, no, I haven't seen my family for ages, I haven't seen my friends, and I want to take the opportunity to go, but I want to go safely. And I guess one of the focuses of the airports is going to have to be on how they reassure passengers that they can fly safely. And then also to the maritime industry, how they can take passengers on board but make them feel it's safe to travel.
Well, Sarah, you're a familiar figure, familiar voice, and I know many people around the world like this series because they like to hear voices they know, and they find it reassuring on a couple of levels, I think. One is that we're all in this together and that this is touching everyone, but they also hear voices like yours of experience, of leadership, who are looking forward and who are looking to the day beyond, the day when this all ends. I think that's important. It's nice to hear your voice. It's nice to know that you and Eric, who have been great leaders of our industry, are both well. You've got your own pressing human concerns, and that's really poignant to hear. But most of all, I think, speaking from the industry's point of view, Sarah, everyone would be very glad to hear you're well and still working your socks off to keep our industry a better place.
Well, thank you, Martin, and a big thank you to you, a hello to you and to everybody out there, and look forward to seeing you all in person very soon. I know this industry will bounce back, and it will bounce back well. We just need to wait for that to happen. We do indeed. Sarah Branquinho, take good care and thanks for your time.
I'm Martin Moodie with In Crisis, Travel Retail Voices.
And I swear one day we're gonna put this out behind us, and come what may, we will survive. I think it's safe to say that better times are gonna find us. Hope it won't be long till this trouble is gone.